changed their minds and said he was a god. And Paul's like, no, both situations are worse, okay? First, you think I'm this escaped criminal. I'm a man that's been in prison by the centurions. I'm an innocent man. They've got nothing to my charge. And you think I'm this ravenous criminal trying to escape from my life. This venomous beast bites me. You think I'm a murderer, whatever it may be. I shake into the fire. Now you think I'm a god. No. Stop. Neither are true, but their minds are completely changed. The shipwreck survivor, he went from a shipwreck survivor to a murderer, to somebody that, shouldn't be, but they wanted to worship. The locals the understanding shifted based on what? Based on what they witnessed. Okay? Their minds were changed. They said he was a god. Okay? And again, we see what happens here with Paul. So he is shipwrecked onto the shore. He's got nothing. As far as they're concerned, the 276, they've got no way to Rome. I mean, they know that they're shipwrecked. I don't know how they would have communicated that back in those days or what that even would have looked like. They've got nothing. They've got nowhere to go. It's cold, it's wet, it's rainy. These barbarian people, they're at their mercy, sitting around. He's been bitten by a beast, but yet he doesn't panic. He doesn't overreact. He doesn't say, why me? How come this is happening to me? God, you said I was supposed to go to Rome. Now I got this venomous beast hanging off my arm, and all these people think I'm a murderer. Why is this happening to me? No, he shakes it in the fire, and he just continues. And I like how it says there, in verse 6, where it says, but after they had looked a great while, so they were watching. Now look at his arm. Just, you watch it. It's not swelling at all. And actually, he's not even fallen down or anything. And they watched for a great while. And they said, something's different here. And their minds were changed. And here's the thing. When Paul survived the viper bite, it vindicated him without Paul saying a word. Okay? So he didn't have to say, hold on. No, I'm safe. I come in peace. We just crash landed on your shore here. Listen, let me tell you a story about who I am. Let me tell you what all this is about. Let me tell you how everything's supposed to go here. No, he didn't say a word. He just surrendered in his brokenness. And that's what we need to remember too. Your brokenness is a platform. And that part where you get to that point to where you've done what you can, there's nothing left. And the only thing left is to trust in God. You have an audience. Just like the Apostle Paul. Nothing left. No earthly hope. No worldly amenities to get him to where he was supposed to go. And he had an audience. Now we saw that last week with the shipwreck, where at first when he said, sirs, this voyage could cost us our life. But then he stands up amongst them and says, listen, I said it could cost us our life, but God said that we will all make it. And they were tossed to and fro, and they all made it. That vindicated his faith in God. Here we see in his brokenness, he doesn't defend himself. He doesn't panic. He doesn't do anything. He just shakes the beast off into the fire and just continues. He doesn't shake the beast off and say, look at me, I'm the mighty Paul. All right, how can this beast not do anything to me? No, they watched him for a great while. People are watching, okay? And I know sometimes when you're going through it and you've done what you can, and you think, I don't care if people are watching. I'm in the middle of this. I don't know what's going to happen, right? And I don't know what this is going to be. Who cares who is watching me? No. And it's not to add implied pressure by any means, but it's to understand, what, I need to trust in God, number one, because that's most important. I need to rest in him and leave the results up to him. But ultimately, I don't want to do anything that would be detrimental to my testimony for God in the midst of this, okay? When you respond to brokenness with faith, when you respond to brokenness with composure instead of panic and despair, you display something powerful. You display something powerful. I remember when I was at Fostoria Baptist Church, and that was kind of in the midst of, I was working at the steel shop, and I was getting ready to go to Bible college, and there was a lot of that going on. And during that time, it was around 2008, 2009, there was a great economic collapse. And I remember working at the steel shop, and we did regular contract work for other different manufacturers and whatnot, but we also did local work for the farmers in the area, especially in the wintertime when they would take their equipment in and begin their repairs. We'd do a lot of work for them, cutting pieces and bending and welding steel and whatnot. So we had local work, and the phone would ring. We'd take phone orders and whatnot, and I just remember the phone would ring less and less and less, and there would be days now it was getting to where the phone wouldn't even ring. We weren't getting any walk-in work. Our contract work was just slowly dwindling down. We were getting the projects done. And at that time, the only one left was my boss and me. And I remember, actually it was Emily's, it would have been Emily's sixth birthday. It was their 6th birthday. I remember I woke up and I wasn't feeling very good, and I wasn't gonna go into work. I wasn't feeling good. We were getting ready for Emily's birthday party, so I called in to take the day off. My boss actually called back and he's like, listen, he's like, you know what? We've got no orders. There hasn't been a customer. He's like, I'm just gonna have to lay off for the time being until we can figure this out and things pick back up. And I was laid off, and it was understandable, and I always used to joke because Alex was like, Dad, how come you were laid off? I said, well, son, we got all the work done. And that's really what it was. But nonetheless, Matt's doing fine now. He got into the industrial overhead door business. He was building, I helped him design and build some not coal, but just some furnaces and boilers that could do that. So he's making boilers, he's doing overhead doors, he's doing fine. But I remember as I was laid off, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna trust in God. I'm gonna figure out, we're just gonna wait on the Lord and see what he has for us. We knew that the intent was eventually to go to Bible college, whether it was Midwestern or Ambassador, and we were just gonna wait. And I remember people at church, how's it going? You looking for a job? What's going on? And I'm like, nope. So you know what, God just told us to wait. And I just remember some of the people would just look like, what? What is wrong with you? Why aren't you panicked? Why aren't you going crazy? Why aren't you, no, God's given us a plan, and we're just going to trust in that plan. And again, I understand they were encouraging, they were supportive and all of that, but, in our household, we were convinced that God had a plan for us, and it was. Little did we know that it evolved almost going down to Ambassador, but it ended up going to Reese Baptist Church is what it was. God worked it all out to that end. And I tell you, we wouldn't have been able to have been there if I hadn't gone through that storm in regards to the economy collapsing and whatnot at that time. All that to say, responding with brokenness, with faith and composure instead of panic, you display something powerful. Your broken circumstances become proof of something bigger than yourself. And that's a great place to be. Number 2, the blessing of unexpected ministry. Look at verse 7. In the same quarters were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was Publius, who received us and lodged us 3 days courteously. And it came to pass that the father of Publius lay sick of a fever and of a bloody flux, to whom Paul entered in and prayed and laid his hands on him and healed him. So when this was done, others also, which had diseases in the island, came and were healed. So we see here from the wreckage there, Paul is taken to Publius, the chief man of the island. So we see what's happening there. He's taken to the chief man of the island, and he's brought in because the people watched that he didn't argue, he didn't overreact, he didn't panic, he didn't respond to the venomous bite of the venomous beast. So they said, you know what, this man, we need to take him to Publius. And they did. And Publius was there. He says, bring this guy in. You won't believe this. This guy was bitten by a viper, not a thing. Didn't even feel it. No pain whatsoever. And he says, good, take him unto my father. And he enters into the room, and we see here, verse number 9. So when this was done, all theirs which had diseases in the island came and were healed, because when Publius' father, who was sick of a fever and of a bloody flux, to whom Paul entered in and prayed and laid his hands on him, he healed him. So let's hold that as we continue here. The word spreads, and people come to Paul, and he heals them. And the islanders honor Paul, and he survives, and they give him provisions for the journey. Look at verse 10. Who honored us with many honors, and when we departed, they laded us with such things as were necessary. Verse 11. And after 3 months, we departed in a ship of Alexandria, which had wintered in the isle, whose sign was Castor and Pollux. So after 3 months, they finally made it, but they bestowed them upon the gifts and the things that they would need to venture on their journey. So again, here's what happened. Paul's faith in the middle of brokenness displayed God's power. We see that. The shipwreck, the breaking, became the exact mechanism through which God blessed an entire island. Here's the other part of that. This makes me think of Jonah. Their minds were on getting to Rome. God's mind was on the people of Melita. And you see how God's sending him through that and sending them there, wreck the ship. I only imagine that if God would have said, if God would have said in the Spirit to Paul, you must first go to Melita, Paul was in the Spirit, obedient to that. They probably would have went, but for some reason or another, maybe he couldn't have gotten the captains to agree to it. He couldn't even get the captains to not set sail because of the storm. They went anyways. So Paul put them in a shipwreck and got them to land on Melita because he had a burden for those people that were there. Those people created in his image, those people to whom Jesus Christ also died for. And that's why I say it makes me think of Jonah. Jonah went the complete opposite way, running from God for the people of Nineveh because God had a burden for the people of Nineveh. The people that he created in his image, the people that he loved and wanted to see turn to him, which they did, just like the people of Melita. And the Apostle Paul, in his brokenness, so it wasn't about the fact that he was bitten by a venomous beast and didn't get hurt. It was that he was bitten by a venomous beast and didn't feel a thing, so the people would come to understand that this was a situation that was beyond them. That they had, for a time, as we can see, that they knew that Publius' father was sick and continually getting worse. And from their perspective, it was just a part of life that his father was going to die. And nonetheless, they had others sick as well. But God had other plans. Plans beyond them, just like Paul had other plans beyond himself that God had for them, to be shipwrecked on that island for that unexpected ministry. That Paul showed his composure in his brokenness and was used mightily of the Lord. And because he was used mightily, do you see how all of that comes together in the brokenness? Was their plan, we're going to leave from Crete, we're going to stop at Melita, and the people of Melita are going to honor us with many honors. They're going to lade us with such things that were necessary. They're going to give us everything we need. Because there's no way we're going to make it through here and then all the way up into Rome. It's just not going to happen. So we'll stop at Melita. Everything's going to work out just fine. Nope, that wasn't the plan at all. They were shipwrecked. They had nothing. How in the world are we going to do this? How are we going to calculate this? How are we going to figure this out? God says, it's not for you to figure out. It's not your plan. It's mine. He says, as a matter of fact, before you even left Crete, I'm sending a storm. And you're going to sail through that storm. You're not going to know where you're going. You're going to be bounced around like a BB in a coffee can for 14 days. And I'm going to have you shipwrecked. You're all going to survive. Don't worry. You'll all make it. I know there's some that can't swim, but there's going to be broken boards. They can kick their way in. You're going to land on there, and there's these people that you're going to be terrified of that I made. And as a matter of fact, those people are kind of going through something. The chief of their tribe, his father is sick, and there's a bunch of other people sick there, and they're just really going through it too. You guys are going through it, but I'm going to bring you together. And I'm going to have a viper bite Paul, and you guys are going to see, and everyone else is going to see. And before you know it, before you leave, you're going to spend 3 months there. Your heart's united and bonded to these people. And not only that, you're going to be given everything you need as well as some gifts as you make it to Rome. For the people of Melita, your chief's father is sick. I'm going to send a man. He's going to wash up on the shore. And he's going to come, and you're going to see one of their most poisonous snakes bite these guys. And you're going to realize that this man was sent from somewhere else. And he's going to come, and he's going to heal your chief's father as well as many others. And you guys will be just fine as you sail away. None of that is in our plans whatsoever. So when we find ourselves getting in those mindsets of thinking, I don't know how this is going to work, praise the Lord, because you're giving God an opportunity to do only what he can do. And so many times we size things up through exactly our expectations, our mindset, and exactly how everything's going to go, instead of just leaving it to God. Do everything that you can and just leave the rest unto the Lord. I was talking to my wife today, as we were driving away from Nancy's funeral service. And, odd to say, just a good time to see some people. There were laughs shared, but it was a great encouragement and comfort to all. And as we were getting ready, she knew that we were going to drive home, and I was getting ready for tonight. And in the midst of that, I got an email letting me know that my boss from corporate is going to be on site tomorrow. And he wants to meet with me, and he wants to see everything that I'm doing and see all the things that I've got going on and how my projects are helping, increase profits, how it's helping with productivity, how it's helping with spindle utilization, how it's helping with inventory reduction and all of that. And my wife was like sitting there listening to me. I said, honey, I said, you know what? I am who I am, and I can only do what I can do. I said, the rest is up to God. Instead of thinking, oh no, I got to leave church tonight, I got to go in the office, and it is what I've done everything that I can, and that's what it is. And it's not as though everything's fallen apart or anything like that, but it's up to God. It's up to Him. I'm going to lay it out. And there's actually some things I'm excited to share with them, but there's no reason for me to panic, no reason for me to freak out, because God's got it all under control, and God can only do what God can do. And it's the same thing. The same thing when it comes to pastoring a church. It's all up to God. It's all up to Him. The results are in His hands. So again, that's what we see here. So here's the thing. What if your broken circumstances aren't stopping God's work? They're the exact platform that He's using. Think about that. How is God using your situation? How can God? Have you surrendered your situation to God to be used in a glorious way to His glory and to His honor? Again, we talked about it, a lost job. Maybe it's something comes of that. You discover a spiritual gift you didn't know you had while serving and being unemployed. Maybe you failed publicly and your humility and growth became a testimony that changed someone's life. See, the world says this. The world says your broken circumstances mean you're done, you're finished, you failed. But God says your brokenness is exactly where I work best. And that's the truth for all of us, just as much as it was for the Apostle Paul. And I love that in verse 11. And after 3 months, they stuck around for a while. They departed. And then you can see in verse 12, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks, and landing at Syracuse, we tarried there 3 days. And from thence we fetched a compass and came to Rhegium. And after 1 day south wind blew, and we came the next day to Puteoli, and where we found brethren, and were desired to tarry with them 7 days. So we went toward Rome. He's going to get there. He's going to get there before we get to the end of the book. How do we know? Well, the next page in my Bible says what? The book of Romans. So he gets there in God's perfect timing, and God will bring it all to pass in His timing as well. So with that, let's see those prayer requests, and we'll go take it to the Lord.